Indeed, the severe economic crisis has made daily life in Sri Lanka a struggle for most of the Sri Lankans. So since the start of the crisis, the UN early warning system has tracked over 1,000 protests. Initially, these were peaceful and driven by spontaneous citizens' participation and characterized by a call for a change of the government. They were joined by political parties, trade unions, student unions, and the clergy and other interest groups. But as the shortage in fuel and gas became more pointed, we started witnessing a new form of protests and clashes around distribution points. But then attempts to break up the protests and a violent counter-demonstration attempts then led to the violence that you have witnessed on the media, and of course to the declaration of a state of emergency. There needs to be a meaningful and inclusive dialogue with all parties of the societies to find the pathway forward and address the socioeconomic challenges faced by the people. Right now, perhaps I hope there is a beginning of perhaps a political process, because political stability is absolutely critical to create an enabling environment for the negotiations with the IMF, which is now critical. And these negotiations then can set up the way forward for economic recovery. We are working very closely with the international financing institutes, so like the World Bank, the IMF, the ADB, to help ensure their support in a coordinated way with the UN approach. Now, I think it's very important and it's imperative that we prevent a humanitarian crisis. So we need to be making interventions now. This is a middle income country and we need to protect the institution and from falling into a humanitarian style. The technical part of the government now is still working and functioning. And of course, only up till last week, before the cabinet was dissolved, I met with the Minister of Finance to discuss the UN support and worked with him on the support in the areas of health, social protection, food security, and macroeconomic policy advice. And my colleagues from all the agencies are still working with their technical focal points in the ministries. So we must help avoid taking steps backwards on key social indicators in which Sri Lanka has been a model, like for example, on the health in the long term. The challenge of the economic crisis on health requires policy solutions that safeguards principles of the primary health care. On food security, we need to really plunge with full support to support agriculture, as well as the protect livelihood and promote food access and nutrition to the vulnerable group. And remember, with the crisis, it's not only the traditional vulnerable group, you have even other middle class or lower middle class that really had slided into vulnerable groups as well. On social protection in the long term, we want to see a strong social protection system in Sri Lanka to ensure that all people are financially resilient and have a social safety net, while at the same time empowering, focusing on youth and women leaders to promote a peaceful coexistence and build the social cohesion. Finally, we also recognize there are some broader political and systematic root causes that have perpetrated this discrimination and undermined human rights. And these consistently needs to be addressed. So looking ahead at the very long term, we are just now finalizing what we call the UNS, the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework, which covers the years 2023 to 2027, which includes a number of strategies and programs to help Sri Lanka build a more sustainable and inclusive economy that benefits the people and the planet.